This episode is brought to you by Marvel Studios' Captain America: Brave New World, starring Anthony Mackie as Captain America and Harrison Ford as President Ross. Don't miss the explosive return of Captain America as Sam Wilson uncovers a mysterious plot that threatens to destabilize the globe and confront an enemy that has the entire world seeing red. Enter A Brave New World in IMAX and 3D on February 14th.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
Honestly, I'm in the mood for a bit of retribution over recent shite performances.
I think Arne Slot's in the mood for retribution as well after his perfect 2024 was spoiled by villainous Nottingham Forest. And tomorrow night, he will have the chance at retribution. Now, obviously, 2025 has already begun with one defeat in the Spurs game. And Arne will not want to replicate that in this one. Forest, let's be fair, they're the biggest overachiever anywhere in Europe right now. They are currently third in the Premier League, only on goal difference. They've won more games than Arsenal, who they sit tied on points with, but goal difference keeps them behind the, I don't want to say failing Gooners because they're second in the league, but they seem to be flailing at the moment as they lose to the Toon in the week and then go out of the FA Cup both at home while not looking particularly impressive in the league either. But Forest do look impressive, Carl, with 6 wins in a row, and they have already won 12 games this season, which, you know, when you take into account that last season, in the entirety of their Premier League campaign, they won 9 games and took 32 points. And the season before, which was their first season back in the top flight, they won 9 games and took 38 points. They've already accomplished more thus far this season than they did in either of the last 2. And in fact, they're on course to win more games and take more points this season than they did in the last 2 combined.
Absolutely agree with everything you've said there. I'm just about okay with you calling them the most, did you say overachieving team or in Europe this year, did you say? I think the only one I could find that is reasonably close to them is Samsunspor in Turkey. They were 14th, 15th last year, this year. So them and Nottingham Forest. So can we call Forest the Samsunspor of the Premier League for the remainder of the week? Absolutely.
If they beat us, they're going to be Samsunspor. That's what they'll be called for forever and ever.
We know exactly how good Forest can be because they were the only team to put in a performance worthy of beating us. And I still think that that's the case, even though we did lose against Tottenham. I don't think Tottenham put in a performance which was worthy of beating us. I think Nottingham Forest did. They were much better than us on the day. They stopped us creating anything. They stopped us getting into any kind of rhythm. They were more dangerous than us with their types of attacks, even though Liverpool maybe had more time of attacking or time in the final third or whatever. We didn't really get to do anything with it, was the point. And that was largely down to Nottingham Forest's resilience and organisation and really, really good off-the-ball work. And they had a plan to get out as well. It wasn't like they just sat behind the ball and caused us one problem all game long. So we know how dangerous they are. They have been absolutely excellent. The point you make about winning games, I think, is the most important one, because they have lost a few. You know, they've lost 4, which is the same as Brighton and Fulham and Chelsea this year and a couple of others. But winning games is always the biggest difference. Like, it's all well and good not losing matches, but you've only got to look at Juventus this year as to what draws can do for you. They are unbeaten in Serie A. They're not even in the top 4 in Serie A, and that's due to...
What a mess. How do you get unbeaten and you're miles off top? Like, that is staggering levels of lacking ambition from Juventus this year. Which, yeah, you are right about Forest. Like, they came to Anfield. Now, look, we had almost 70% of the ball, but they had 5 shots. They had 3 on target. They didn't just sit back. They had 2 corners in the game. They didn't just sit back. Like, they waited for their opportunities and they moved through us quite well. Like, they were good. There's just no doubt about it. They were good on the day. And you look at their team and there's just a lot of good partnerships and a lot of talent. Like, the centre-back pairing of Milenkovic and Murillo have been outstanding this year. Ola Aina has been outstanding this year. Maybe you could make a case for him as the best fullback in the Premier League this season. He's played right back and left back for them. They've had a bit of rotation then in the other fullback position because Moreno has played, Nico Williams has played. I think Ola Bamadeli probably would have been the starter, but he's missed the whole season so far. So I do think there's real solidity in that defence. Matt Sells is having a really good season, which I don't think anybody expected. In midfield, they lost Danilo after like minutes of the season. Ibrahim Sangaré got hurt, and yet they've still just patched it together. Ryan Yates has been very good. Elliot Anderson's been very good. Nico Dominguez has been very good. Ward Prowse has played in fits and starts, but he's been quite decent for them. And then obviously Chris Wood up front is in great form. And the line behind the striker, I think, is where the real talent lies. You've got Elanga on the right. If anyone can explain to me why United sold him, I'd love to know, because he's better than quite a few of the players that play for them. Gibbs White, for me, is one of the best playmakers in the league. And Callum Hudson-Odoi, who scored that winner at Anfield, he has been brilliant. Like, they got him, I think, for 5 million, Carl, as a reclamation project. And he is really starting to show why he was so highly regarded as a youngster. This is a really good squad of players.
Yeah, tremendous. Like you said, the line behind the forward, no doubt that Chris Wood has had a half season, which is like up there among the best he's ever done. But that line behind is all important. And to be honest, the line behind them as well, because there's a lot more cohesion and solidity and consistency about them. I think Anderson coming in, bringing like a lot of energy, fine, he does, but he's actually been really controlled on the ball. He's very, very, let's say, economical with what he does with it. He's not really responsible for creativity, let's say, just progression, and he does that really well. I think he's like quite sensible with what he does. He still gets plenty of assists because he gets forward and he's happy to lay off a few and delivers decent set piece and all the rest of it. But his job is simplified, if you like, by what Nuno asks of him, which is to help win the ball back and make sure that it gets through to the next line then. And he's much more patient now, I think. He was a bit scatty sometimes at Newcastle, probably just the whole, thing about being a homegrown player and the crowd and all the rest of it. And he was young, obviously. So I think he has matured quite a bit at Forest. But that line, like, I know they paid quite big money for Gibbs White, considering Wolves didn't really seem to ever trust him or play him. But you mentioned 5 million, whatever it was, for Hudson-Odoi. Elanga, I think, was only 15 million.
Yeah.
So, if those three, even, you can say all three of them, That's probably, if they're not Champions League quality, they're pretty close to it. And given the ages of at least two of them, they certainly could get there in the not too distant future. So it's a really, really well put together line. It has taken plenty of time to come together. I think we can point that out as well, because they had 2 years of just signing anybody and everybody which moved. And Chris Wood, I mean, again, absolutely excellent for the first half of the season, right? 12 league goals so far. It's not that long ago that Nottingham Forest tried to sign about 5 forwards.
Yeah.
And they were all very, very different kinds of forwards. They did not know that they were going to be getting this from Chris Wood this season.
They tried to sign Santiago Jimenez in the summer. They tried 3 different times. They tried for everybody.
They tried Wissa. They tried
Wissa as well, yeah.
Jimenez. They tried Nketiah and a couple of others. There was no correlation between the type of forward. They didn't know they were getting this with Chris Wood, but that doesn't take away anything of the fact that they are getting this from Chris Wood.
That's the thing. And as you said, they came up, they kind of went scattergun and literally were just signing anybody with a pulse. But the argument in their favour was they lost a lot of the squad because they got a bunch of very important loan players in their squad when they came up, and the clubs that those players were at weren't willing to sell them to him or to them. So they did sign a lot of players, and a lot of them didn't work out, but a couple did. And then they did the same again the next summer, signed a lot of players. Some didn't work, but some did. And they kind of patched together a squad. And then in this past summer, it was a bit more pointed. Like, they wanted a goalkeeper. They went and they got Carlos Miguel, the Brazilian, who's a giant. They wanted a centre-back, so they went and got Milenkovic. They wanted a midfielder, so they went and they got Elliot Anderson. They wanted a centre-back for depth, so they went and got Morato to back up Murillo. They signed David Carmel, I assume, as a way to get him to Olympiacos more than anything. But they wanted depth in the wide areas. They got Jota Silva and Ramon Sosa, both of whom have contributed. And this is where what Nuno's done becomes quite impressive. It's not just that they've got a really good starting 11 and haven't had injuries. Danilo and Sanguer have missed most of the season. They've had other players, like Gibbs White missed a couple of games. They've had other players that missed games, and yet people are just stepping up and doing good performances for them. Like those two on the wing. When Hudson-Odoi or Elanga is out, or when they need a rest, or when it's a cup match, they're just able to throw Jota Silva or Ramon Sosa on the wing. When Gibbs White is out, you can throw Elliot Anderson in the 10. They've used Ward-Prowse there. When Chris Wood needs a break, Awoniyi's come on. He's had some good performances for them. Like, they're getting really good performance across their squad. And it is quite a deep squad. You don't really have a position where you look at it and think, oh, if he gets hurt, they're absolutely screwed. Because, like I said, Gibbs White's their best player. He missed 4 or 5 games. Yes, they did stumble a bit in those games, but at the same time, they were still able to pick up some points along the way and keep themselves afloat. And then once they get him back, all of a sudden, they're performing like a top 4 team again. Now, whether they can sustain this, I have significant doubts. I don't think we see Nottingham Forest in the top 4 or 5 come the end of the season. But what they're doing is making it so that a Europa League spot looks very likely for them.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, that would be massive for Forest. I mean, we mentioned briefly midweek about, was it Aston Villa you were talking about, in terms of teams who had gone down and they were the biggest ones maybe in British football history to be relegated and then have to come back up. And obviously Nottingham Forest would be in the conversation for that at the very least. This return to Europe, if they go on and achieve it, would be massive for them. They're a club who for a long time felt that they belonged in Europe. And it was an awful long time that they were way, way, way away from it as well. Even if they'd have gone on and finished top half this season, that would have been seen as a staggering rise for them, especially when you consider, generally speaking, we talk about like 8 teams now going for Champions League spots, or at least think that they should be going for Champions League spots. So that would have been massive alone. I think the one thing that we do need to acknowledge here, and not just acknowledge, but absolutely believe and trust that is still a thing, is the curse of the manager of the month. Because he's just won 6 in a row and he's been named December's one. So doesn't that mean he has to lose the next game by law?
I think so. I think that actually does by law. That's written into the bylaws of English football. And it's funny with him because, like, when people talk about Nuno, they seem to mostly remember the end of the Wolves tenure, where it had gotten very stale and the football was really tough to watch. And then obviously the disastrous spell at Spurs that he had. But it's worth remembering, the guy did a fantastic job at Wolves. Like a genuinely fantastic job at Wolves. Took them into the Premier League and then had them top half, I think, back-to-back seasons. Which is really, really impressive for any newly promoted team. And they've never been as good since he left, having cycled through, I think now they're on manager number 4 or 5. Laj Lopetegui, they're on manager number 4. And they haven't been as good since he left. Like, he is a good manager. He gets the best out of his players. The football at times is dull. That's absolutely factual. But the guy has won Premier League Manager of the Month 6 times now, which is, it's no mean feat. There's not a whole lot of managers in the history of the game that have won it more than him. Like, you've got Ferguson on 27, Wenger 15, Pep 11, Klopp and Moyes somehow with the same number on 10. You've got Martin O'Neill, Harry Redknapp on 8, longevity helping them massively. Arteta on 7, Rafa on 7. And then it's Nuno, along with Big Sam, who, again, longevity, and Bobby Robson, who's one of the greats. More than Carlo, more than Eddie Howe, more than Keegan, more than Ranieri, who won the title, more than Mourinho. More than Jose Mourinho. So, he has got good pedigree himself.
This is MLS and U.S. soccer commentator Brian Dunseth here to tell you the only podcast you need to fulfill your weekly soccer needs. It's Week in the Tackle.
And I'm Tom Rennie. We'll talk the Premier League title race, the Champions League, MLS expansionism, and the ongoing disappointments of our respective teams. It's all on Week in the Tackle.
Didn't your West Ham just win a European trophy?
Ah, that night in Prague. Sorry, what were we talking about?
A Week in the Tackle available wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single episode.
Yeah, definitely so. And look, I think it's well justified this year, not just this month with the results that they've had, but just in terms of team building as well. I'm not talking about the award now, but the acknowledgement of him being in a a category, let's say, of managers who deserve that kind of acknowledgement is the right word, really. It's nothing to do with them winning anything. It's nothing to do with saying, like, oh, he's a better manager than Ranieri or anything like that. But the acknowledgement of doing a really good job. Like, we've spoken about Moyes lots of times before about having that really, really terrible period, but comes back and does well twice at West Ham, to the extent that he did win something. Now, I'm not sure how feasible for Nottingham Forest to think that they can win the trophy in the next 2 years, let's say, if they continue this kind of team-building approach, maybe. A domestic cup shouldn't really be outside of the realms of possibility, and if they do qualify for Europa Conference League, again, I think most Premier League teams should back themselves to do well in those competitions because of the money available, the squad depth that they have, like you've spoken about, and just this all-round setup that he has right now is really, really replicable. Like, if they were to lose 2 key players, let's say Chris Wood, obviously relatively old, not ancient by any means, but what is he, 33, so he'll be heading into a European campaign, maybe 34 years of age. You probably do want a different forward, but I don't think that they're going to struggle to get a Chris Wood level of striker next year if they're in Europe, like they did clearly this year. If they identify the exact type that they want this time, if they lose out on one of those 3 behind, either they've got someone to already step in like Sousa, or I think, again, you're probably shown that you've got a really clear idea of the job. A young, talented, quick, ball-carrying goal threat is going to be able to come into the team, have a really good impact, and, again, potentially either be pushing to win things or make a move afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is one of the benefits of being in Europe, is that it does make it a lot easier for you to get players. And like you said, like you'll find players of a Chris Wood caliber. Like, let's not forget, they sign him coming off the worst year of his career since he'd established himself. You know, he really established himself at Leeds, and then he had 4 very good years at Burnley. But then he had a bad season at Burnley. He had a bad half season at the Toon. Forest sign him on loan with an obligation to buy if they stay up. They stay up. He was dreadful. He played 7 times, scored once, and just was a non-factor for much of that back half of that season. So he's actually coming off 2 bad years when they made the deal permanent. They tried to sell him immediately upon making that deal permanent. They tried to get out of it as well, because they said he hadn't played a certain amount of games, but the contract apparently was either stay up or play this many games and you have to sign him. They tried to get out of it. They can't. And last season, he got 14 goals in 31 games for them. So again, he did produce last season. But like you said, in the summer then, they're looking at this striker and that striker and another striker, and they might turn around now and say, oh, well, we were actually going to move on Teo Awoniyi. Okay, maybe that's the truth. But you weren't spending 30 million on a striker to come in and be the backup. Like, you didn't ring Santiago Jimenez's agent and say, does your boy want to come and be backup to Chris Wood? When you were talking to Eddie Nketiah and his people, you had him in the building for discussions. You weren't settling him on the idea of, well, you're going to get 15 minutes off the bench when Chris Wood needs a rest, and you'll play the cup games. You were looking for a starting striker, and Chris Wood was going to be the backup. And yet, here he is, 20 games into the season, he's got 12 goals, and he's been really good. Like, he has been really good. And they've been really good. And if we look at their results thus far in the Premier League, they draw at home with Bournemouth on the opening day, a game they really should have won. They go and they beat Southampton away, which, in fairness, everybody does. They draw at home with Wolves, and again they were disappointed because they scored and then 2 minutes later coughed up an equaliser. Then they'll go to Anfield and win. Then they go to Brighton and get a good draw. They lose at home to Fulham, which, I think is a fair enough result. Fulham are a good team away from home. Go to Chelsea and get a good draw. Beat Palace home, beat Leicester home, beat West Ham home. Then it looks like the wheels start to fall off. They lose 3-1 at home to Newcastle, having been 1 up. They go to Arsenal and lose 3-0, and nobody's massively surprised. They beat Ipswich 1-0. Then they lose 3-0 away to City. And, dreadful form or not, they're still Man City, so there's not a huge surprise there. But there was an assumption that, they've just lost those games, and look at the run they've got coming up. Well, they go to Old Trafford and win 3-2. They beat Villa 2-1 at home. They go to Brentford. Now, we had talked about them and their home form and how it was a little bit, soft schedule favoured, but they still went there and won 2-0. They beat Spurs 1-0 at home. They go to Everton and win 2-0, and then they go to Wolves and win 3-0. Then he had 3 shots on target, but they won the game 3-0. This is a very impressive run. They have been favoured with a bit of a softer schedule at times, and the win away to us is comfortably their best win, but there's also some other good wins in there. Even if, they haven't had the toughest collective, runs of games, even the games that look like they'd be tough. You get United with a new manager, things are still very up and down. You get Villa in a really bad run of form. Things like that. Spurs in a bad run of form with injuries. But ultimately, you can only beat what's in front of you, and they've done a really good job of that this season.
Yeah, not wrong. And you mentioned about the home form, and we've spoken before about their home games. I would say arguably they might have even been a little disappointed with the results that they've had on home soil, because they've won 5 and not won 4. So I think if you're going to go anywhere for Forest to improve, that's probably where it is. It's not among the very best. Obviously, it's sort of 8th in terms of home form across the season by points won. So there's still room for them to improve, and that's a magnificent thing for them to look at, considering where they are in the table. I think for them, obviously as supporters, it's easy now to get carried away and think, we've got to keep playing exactly the same, got to keep winning the same number of games and make sure you finish in the top 4. But it's such a difficult thing to do, and especially now we don't know how back Manchester City are, but let's assume that they're going to be at least not losing 12 out of 13 games going forward, and it's pretty obvious that they will be back in the discussion for top 4, top 3 very, very soon. Chelsea obviously stuttered themselves. Newcastle have been on a really good win streak. We could yet see one of the other sides who are normally top 8 go on a really good winning run. They're miles off at the minute, but I don't think Forest have to do anything other than keep doing what they have done. And if they don't win as many games, if they don't get 2 points per game across the second half of the season, that's all right. They're way, way ahead of schedule in terms of improving season on season, and there just cannot be anything other than massive optimism around the club. And like I said, if you have got some areas that you can see you still can improve, goal return, home form, that kind of thing, I just think that that's a massive opportunity that they have to see it like that.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. They have 2 notable areas that are within their own control to improve it. One, like you said, scoring more goals, and 2, improving the home form. Because the home form hasn't quite been good enough. Now, it's been obviously quite decent of late. But again, you're looking at Bournemouth going there, getting a draw. Wolves going there, getting a draw. Fulham going there and winning. And Newcastle going there and winning. So that's 4 games that they'll look at and think, okay, well, Newcastle we can live with because, they're top 4 adjacent. Bournemouth are having a really good season, but the manner of the draw was probably more disappointing than anything else. But Wolves and Fulham are the 2 they might look at and think, right, no more of that. No more of that. No more dropping points to teams that are well below us. Bournemouth are in the European mix. Toon are in the Champions League mix. We can accept dropping points to them, but not to anybody else at home. And you look at it, they've got us, then they've got Southampton home, then Bournemouth away, then Brighton home. If they take 7 points from that 4-game run, let's say they lose to us, beat Southampton, draw with Bournemouth, and beat Brighton, which I think is all very realistic. I think that's a good return from that. And like you said, they don't need to take 2 points a game the rest of the way because, well, they might if they want Champions League football. But I don't think anybody at that club could be overly disappointed if you said to them right now, you're going to finish 7th and you're going to be in the Conference League next year. Chelsea are going to jump you, City are going to jump you, Newcastle are going to jump you, and Villa are going to jump you. And you're going to finish 7th. They'd still look at that, I think, as a win. Like ahead of United, ahead of Spurs, ahead of West Ham, who came into the season with big expectations. I think that's still a very good outcome for them. But that's very manageable. Like last year, Chelsea, or was it Chelsea? No, it was Newcastle. Newcastle finished 7th. Should have gotten Conference League football with 60 points, but United won the FA Cup and ended up going into the Europa League. And Chelsea, who got 63 points and finished 6th, went Europa League to Conference League because of the United Cup win. But, 23 points from your last 18 games is very doable for this Nottingham Forest team to get to where Chelsea were in 6th last year. And as you said, like they've made massive improvements from where they were last year. Like they barely survived doesn't reflect the actual points tallies. But if we just look at the raw position in the table, last year they finished in 17th. Now they did have points deducted. 4 points deducted. So they actually would have taken 36 points last year, but they end up on 32. Luckily for them, there were 3 teams just so inept that it wasn't actually close come the end. The season before then, they finished in 16th, 4 points clear of Leicester, who went down. But they were in the relegation battle up until they beat Arsenal with 3 games left or something to kind of secure their spot. This year, I mean, at worst case scenario, they're going to be comfortably mid-table. It's January the 13th, and they're safe. They know they're going to have Premier League football next season. That's a win for them.
Yeah, massive. It really, really is. There's, like you say, the 40-point barrier is probably an anachronism now in Premier League terms because it usually is lower, but to get to 40 after 20 matches is ridiculous, and to have the best current run in the Premier League is ridiculous. 6 games in a row that they've won. Nobody else has that right now. Like you said, only behind Arsenal on goal. There's just go down any part of this season you want for Forest. There is no negative here. Absolutely none. The odd thing that they might have done a bit better, or a result they wouldn't have wanted or would have expected better, whatever. But generally speaking, you can't really take too many negatives out of this. Things to learn and improve, sure, always. But no negatives here whatsoever.
No,
I'm going to talk to you. Go.
But they're also just about to get 2 really good players back.
That as well. And
so that boosts them automatically.
And quite possibly, looking at someone in January as well, they've been linked with 2 or 3 players I've seen already for an addition to the squad. I don't know how much room to manoeuvre they have, but again, the depth that they have options to sell 1 or 2 of the players maybe they bought a year or 2 ago, and still room to go.
And now they're buying from a position of strength rather than a position of desperation. So now they're far more. You say to a player now, come and join us and help us secure European football for next year and play in Europe next year, as opposed to come and help us stay up, and with a bit of luck, you'll be in the Premier League next year. It's a very different situation for them.
So I want to go a bit more detail on Chris Wood. Obviously not the biggest name that they have, but definitely one of the biggest humans that they have. Has been, I think it's fair to say, a bit of a figure that some have laughed at over a few years. Not this year, but certainly previously. He didn't have a great strike rate some seasons. 33 now, just turned 33 last month. He has 12 goals this season, right? Mentioned that earlier. 12 goals in the Premier League. 2 of them are from the penalty spot. Would you care to hazard a guess at his XG, combined XG for the season minus penalties?
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Kroger, an annual Boost membership just got even better. Now you can choose from Disney Plus with ads, Hulu with ads, or ESPN Plus on us when you sign up. Plus, enjoy unlimited free delivery, double fuel points, exclusive offers, and free items. Sign up for a Boost membership today. It's an easier way to save, including new streaming options to relax with while we deliver your groceries. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.